Kevin Feige finally gave us insight into the origin of Marvel post-credit scenes. I'm Alicia Malone, and this is Screen Junkies News. The president of Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige, spoke with Slash Film about how the now ubiquitous post-credit scene became an MCU tradition. Feige explained, "I always liked that sort of thing, whether it's Ferris Bueller or Masters of the Universe. As a film nerd, I never wanted it to end. I didn't want the experience, no matter how good or bad the movie was, just the experience of being in the movie theater. I didn't want it to end. So I would always sit through these credits." These experiences clearly stuck with Feige, as the MCU has a whopping 26 post-credit scenes and counting. Here to discuss the merits of the post-credit scene is Victor Torres. How's it going?
Hello, good. That's so many post-credit scenes.
It's amazing.
I had to like recount each of them. That is super amazing, yeah.
I know, I was trying to figure out how many movies have they had, and that means how many scenes, but it seems to grow with each movie.
Yeah, like, well, first they started out like having like one to each, and now they've got like two, and then like Guardians is like 5. It's ridiculous.
Well, Kevin Feige mentioned that these scenes and the ideas for them, or these tags as they call them, come about at different points in production, post-production, pre-production. What are some examples?
Well, it seems like you mentioned that, so for example, one of being in the developmental stage, the Iron Man 2 tag was actually seen where you see Agent Coulson finding Thor's hammer, and he's like, "I found him." That was actually filmed for Thor, and or wasn't filmed for Thor, it was written for Thor, and Kevin Feige kind of like circled it and was like, let's add this to Iron Man 2. An example of like production, during production, was the first Iron Man. They were filming, and Kevin Feige got the idea of like, let's bring in Samuel L. Jackson to do kind of like a fun Nick Fury scene. Samuel L. Jackson came in to shoot that scene, and the next day it was leaked that he had come. So they ended up putting it at the end of the credits. I think partially because of that, and partially because they felt like it distracted from the main story. And then an example of a post-production example, which is one of the funnier post-credit scenes, and one of kind of the more like inconsequential post-credit scenes of all the MCU, is the shawarma scene at the end of the Avengers, where they're just all hanging out. That was actually filmed during the day of a junket. Like, they were in post-production for the film, and they were like, you know what, if we just had the shawarma scene to kind of like do a callback to the joke that Tony Stark makes, it's hilarious. It's a perfect little button to end the movie.
I love the idea that these scenes make people stay throughout the credits, because you do get a sense, whether you read all the credits or not, that it takes a village to make these movies.
Absolutely.
And everyone usually leaves straight after a film and don't get to see how many people are involved. So the merits of a post-credit scene, I mean, there's so many. It's fun to watch too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fun to watch. I think you bring up a really good point, that there's so many hundreds of people involved to bring this 2 hours of entertainment for millions of people. And so I think it is kind of a cool way to kind of just make people sit through 10 minutes of credits, see all the people who really, put themselves forward and worked hard to get this done. Personally, I think it's always really cool, because I like the tease for an upcoming movie, or I like a little joke at the end. I even think if you're like reading like comic storylines, like, you kind of have to keep up with like the last issue to kind of figure out where the next issue is going. So it kind of fits into that genre in it as well. But I can totally get that like people get annoyed, because sometimes it does kind of seem like, oh man, like I have had to watch, Captain America: First Avenger and Winter Soldier to fully get the grasp of what Civil War is about. Or sometimes people feel like, one movie is just setting up the next, which doesn't bother me personally, but I can see if someone who's not like a hardcore fan just wants to drop in a movie once in a while, they may miss a lot of the small details that make the whole story really good, just because they haven't seen the prior movies.
Well, for me, I know a lot of the post-credit scenes are little hints about what's coming next, and sometimes I don't understand them, because they're Easter eggs that are specific to the comic book world that we haven't talked about yet on this show.
Wikipedia, right?
I know, but I do like the way that it bridges it all together, because this is a cinematic universe and not just a standalone film.
I totally agree. I think that really adds to make this kind of a living, breathing universe where everything is connected, and it feels organic, because when you take properties like Doctor Strange, or you take things like Guardians, and you're trying to so different from something like Avengers, but now everyone's super excited to see them meet up and have them, have a raccoon interact with like the Hulk, something crazy like that. So I think it's a pretty smart move on Marvel's part.
So what are some of your favorite post-credit scenes?
Okay, so I have two specific ones. One is more kind of setting up the story for like an upcoming film, or was setting up the story, and that is Captain America: The First Avenger. There's the scene where Steve Rogers is punching the crap out of it. Look at that. He just tosses it across the room. And Nick Fury approaches him. And it's kind of similar to the one at the end of Iron Man 1. But one of the reasons I liked this scene so much is you can kind of look around. We know, us as the audience, that he's actually in present day, New York, and he's just punching in this gym that's supposed to look like the 1940s. So to me, that not only brought him back to the fold with like the rest of the Avengers to set up where they'll be going, but it was also a reminder that he is a man out of his own time. He has a lot of catching up to do. And so for me, that just got me super psyched out. And just to see him punch that punching bag off, that was just like the coolest thing in the world. I tried doing that for weeks afterwards. It didn't work out. And an example of just a funny kind of tag that they have at the end of a movie. My favorite is in the most spoiler alert. Spoiler warning, the recent Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, it's the first post-credit scene where Kraglin has Yondu's whistle arrow thing, and he's like practicing with it, and you kind of see it like kind of flopping along, and then he gets it going and it goes off camera, and all of a sudden you just hear Drax like screaming in pain because he's accidentally stabbed him in the shoulder. And it's just totally out of nowhere moment that I was just like in tears laughing because I just had no idea that was coming. So those are my two favorites. What about yourself?
Guardians 2, if people haven't seen it, they definitely need to stay for the whole credits because there are several post-credit scenes.
There are 5 post-credit scenes.
And they're all fun to watch?
They're all fun. They're all fun to watch. I would say a good chunk of them are just kind of, fun little jokes. But there are a couple that are fun Easter eggs. There are a couple that are fun like setting up where the universe is going. It's a good mixed bag. I loved every one of them.
Well, my favorite post-credit scene is the shawarma that you mentioned before.
So great.
Just because it comes out of nowhere and it's so irreverent. And I also felt like this was the moment that was pure Joss Whedon to me.
Yeah.
Something that was funny, a callback to previous, has the ensemble there together, and the fact that it didn't require any knowledge of comic books. I was like, yeah, I get it.
It's super fun. And fun fact that in that scene, you can see Steve Rogers kind of doing this. He actually had a full-blown beard, which is why he's like hiding his face.
That is so funny. I didn't know that at all. I mean, to look at them, they look like they just finished the movie. So it's amazing that they shot that later on. And just the fact that everyone else is cleaning up around them.
Yeah, like
it says so much without having to spell it all out.
They weren't just invaded by the Chitauri.
Well, Victor Torres, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for After the Credits.
Yes.
Might have you back.
We'll have a post-credit scene after this show.
We want to know, what's your favourite MCU post-credit scene and what do you think it adds to the whole cinematic universe? Let us know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to click over here for more internets, subscribe to SJ News, and you can also follow us on Twitter at SJ News. We'll see you soon.